Hi, everyone again, everyone. This is Ace Monix, along with the one and only Jade. Welcome to another episode of Wrestling Weekend Recap, where we give you the good, the bad, and the latest inside news of what's going on with Monday Night Raw, Friday Night Smackdown, and what's going on also with the Wednesday Night Wars between NXT and AEW Dynamite. And as always, we would like to mention that everything that we say on this platform is strictly our opinion and does not reflect necessarily the views of the platform that we're on or the wrestling companies that we talk about. And now, don't have a cow, man. We here at Aceman Armageddon brand, we would like to extend our condolences to the family, friends of one Pat Patterson. This show, in part, is dedicated to his memory. Jade and I, we never got to see any of Pat Patterson's matches during his inception. Also, as him being the first ever Intercontinental Champion in his career. But as fans, we were fortunate to see we got to see Pat Patterson as part of Vince McMahon's corporation back in the Attitude Era when he was one of the stooges, so to speak. Those were still entertaining times that Pat Patterson brought to us as WWE fans, WWF fans. Those are very unforgettable. I remember way back when, especially on an episode of WWF Access, when Al Snow and Jonathan Coachman, they were the ones hosting that episode, and I believe that was during the 9/11 week, if I'm not mistaken, Jade, where Al Snow got to pick from the vault one of his favorite personal matches, and coincidentally, it involved Pat Patterson and Gerald Briscoe when they were taking on the Mean Street Posse from Monday Night Raw back in '99, and of course, that was aired in 2001, of course, September 11th, during that week. So I'm pretty sure let's see, if I recall, September 11th, that was Tuesday. So I believe it was the 15th, the episode of 15th of Excess. And we got to see the clips of that match. It was very entertaining, the way they had it play out with Patterson and Briscoe. They were a duo back then, and this was already when they were ixnayed from the corporation. And still, these punks from Greenwich, Connecticut were part of, Shane McMahon's backup. And they had their way with Patterson and Briscoe, the week before, around that time in '99. And then, of course, they had to set up a match with the 2 versus 3 handicap match. Aside from Briscoe and Patterson already pretty much past their prime, already much, as legends, as future Hall of Famers at that point, it was still entertaining just seeing them there and trying to whack the hell out of Mean Street Posse, and still coming out with the American-made Hulk Hogan theme at that time, kind of like poking fun while Hulk Hogan was in WCW at that point. Of course, there was still the Monday Night Wars going head to head and things of that nature. But we got to see how Pat Patterson was, willing to go down and perform, being as entertaining as he can be, and things of that nature. And it really shows out of him and Gerald Briscoe and all the rest, what they're willing to do their part, for the company, because they were at war at that point. USA versus TNT for the Monday Night ratings. Best times, above all. But that specific match, we later got to revisit it on the network. Part of the full episode of Raw. But as a whole, being also a part of that timeline of Austin versus McMahon and how Briscoe and Patterson were incorporated in it. It just said a lot how, they were very entertaining, their way. And then, of course, later on, Pat Patterson, we know that he was an agent. He was there backstage. And from what we also understood, seeing the special tribute that NXT and Friday Night SmackDown did for him, not only he was an agent, not only he was a special part of the WWE family, but he was also the individual that sung praises of the WWE superstars of today. So many of the tweets that I read out loud, because since I had the episode of this past Friday Night SmackDown DVR, I'd be pretty much pausing just to read the tweets of selected WWE superstars and reading, such heartwarming messages of Pat Patterson. It almost, brought me down to tears, because these were people that obviously were close to him, that he gave great advice to in order for them to, perceive their way in the company and get to a certain point in their careers, or if they got a God-given talent, and, Pat Patterson would let them know and things like that. So having somebody like a Pat Patterson that can tell these guys, whether they did good or whether they did bad, or if he was high on somebody, he let you know, or even his reputation as a jokester, because, he'd be joking a lot, with people and wrestlers in the back, and also how he's always filled with such positive feeling, always with a smile on his face. Just having somebody like that around and no longer there now at this point, that's an element that nobody else can replicate, because only very unique people have those type of features, elements, whatever you want to call it. And Pat Patterson had all of that, and just by the way that all these superstars were giving just heartfelt tweets this week for him, just can't overdo the emotion, of how they truly feel for him. And that just shows how special Pat Patterson was, Jade.
Yes, and I just want to point out that, like you mentioned, even though we never watched Pat Patterson like in his youth, but we did a little poking around, and yes, Pat Patterson was the man who pretty much launched the Intercontinental Championship, because he won the what was then known as the Intercontinental Championship back in 1979 in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and what was then known as the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. And because of Pat Patterson, he set the course for what will become WWE today, and his contributions outside of the ring will always be remembered, because not only was he the inaugural Intercontinental Champion, he was also a part of the inaugural WrestleMania. He was the special guest referee at that time, and aside from that, like you mentioned, he was He was an agent. He did some booking, and the imprint that Pat Patterson left, not just in WWE but also in the entire sports entertainment pro wrestling industry, will always be unforgettable, because there was never one man who was as passionate, who was devoted to the art form of pro wrestling more than Pat Patterson. I mean, and despite the fact that it was revealed now that his sexual orientation, I guess I would call it, and I don't want to disrespect the memory of the man, that his sexual orientation was different. But aside from his personal life, it was his professional life that pretty much resonated with all the people he met, all the wrestlers, all the commentators, all the crew members. He pretty much struck a chord with all these different men and women, and especially within the McMahon family. And that is why Pat Patterson should be remembered as one of the all-time greats, not just in WWE, but in the entire industry in general.
And what I have right here before me from Wrestling Observer, stating that the most detailed look at the life and career of Pat Patterson, from his childhood in Montreal through his being Vince McMahon's assistant and everything in between, is the lead story of this report. This will likely go down as one of the best in history, with stories involving Pat Patterson, and of course one memory that's being put here, featuring him and Bobby Lee, the guy who's never been heard, who set box office records in the summer of 1978. So they began to look at the career highlights from Pat Patterson, from some of the biggest names in the history of the business, where he got the name from, finding out about his orientation, his start in Boston, how Mad Dog Vachon made his career, his days in San Francisco, also being a part of one of the greatest tag teams in the era, being in the middle of Cow Palace, involving one of the greatest feuds of his career, his first encounter with Mae Young, Pretty Boy Patrick Patterson, different stages that led to the Texas Battle Royal, the Cow Palace Battle Royal, and of course him being the father of the Royal Rumble match. So just hearing all of that, it obviously it just tells you how much Pat Patterson was invested in this business, how much he really wanted to be a part of so many great things that took place in the sport of wrestling, and how the Royal Rumble event will live on forever, because that was all a figurehead of one WWE Hall of Famer, Pat Patterson. So once again, before closing this segment out, you can read all of that on the Wrestling Observer website, because that's something that personally we'll check out ourselves after we get off the air. And once again, from here at the Ace Armageddon brand, we extend our condolences to the family and friends of Pat Patterson. You will be missed, and thank you very much for the memories. As we move on, Jade, we definitely have to address the elephant in the room, because we just can't believe what the heck we watched as far as what took place this past Wednesday on AEW Dynamite. That will be addressed later, but we got to get this stuff out of the way first, especially with what we saw this past Monday on Raw and what we saw last night on Friday Night SmackDown. So obviously we saw something wicked at the top of the show on Raw this past Monday night, involving Randy Orton, The Fiend, Bray Wyatt, and one Alexa Bliss. And pretty much the subject matter is all about who's manipulating who. And I can't tell you what I've witnessed is something brilliant that even that kind of left me scratching my head. Okay, it's like, who's really pulling the strings here? You know? But since, of course, Randy Orton gave the the backstory of him and Bray Wyatt, the history that they had, and what would be the weakness that Bray Wyatt had back then, obviously involved the house, Sister Abigail, and all that much altogether. The house had to be burned down. That's what Randy Orton felt. And now we fast forward to this timeline, and Randy Orton kind of put his thoughts together, and he recognized that what makes him weak would be the presence of one Alexa Bliss. And then while the lights were shutting down and everything, and how it's unbelievable that Orton and Bliss are staring at each other. And then it leads to where Orton is carrying Alexa Bliss, and you got Bray Wyatt looking at them too. And who had the control right there? Who had the control? Obviously Orton, because he had the key to the Fiend's doom, to his destruction, maybe, or the beginning of the end for him. And how he was begging off, that was a major throw off. How the Fiend was begging for the return of Alexa Bliss to his arms. And that's like okay, what the heck are we seeing here? Are we seeing how this guy is vulnerable? Are we literally seeing like this guy is really off of his rocker because, for him to not completely exist, Alexa Bliss is like the part of him that he needs in order to keep on going, keep on flourishing and all that. So it's like, okay. But still, it looked like Randy Orton had the upper hand in this whole manipulation angle.
Well, that's what I want to get to, Isman. And I don't know if those of you watching us right now are asking, is this a mind game from the Fiend, Bray Wyatt? Because here's one thing I want to allude to. When the Apex Predator faced off against Bray Wyatt, who was the Eater of Worlds at one point, these two pretty much brought it as much as they could. But from the get-go, it looked like it was Randy who had the upper hand against Bray Wyatt at the time. But this is a different Bray Wyatt. This is the Fiend. This is not a delusional Eater of Worlds who could just say, "Oh yeah, I like to follow buzzards. I like to wallow my world and all that stuff." This is a Fiend who will do anything it takes to ensure that things go his way. Now, granted, And this is what I have to say. What I saw last Monday at Raw was not something a Fiend does. A Fiend hardly shows hurt, especially for Alexa Bliss. But pretty much to the Fiend, Alexa Bliss is his favorite pawn. But here's what I'm thinking from now. It's like the only way that the Fiend can get one over Randy Orton is to show that he is not affected in any way, shape, or form. He's the one who has to move all the pieces on the board, because when he was simply the Eater of Worlds, the problem with Bray Wyatt was that he just got full of himself. He got so caught up in the momentum, and that's how Randy got the best of him at the first time they faced off, which was at WrestleMania. But being the Fiend, all he can do is come up with a way to say, okay, Randy, you can say whatever you want, you can knock me whatever you want, but it's gonna be your ego. You're gonna be the one being fully yourself. You're the one that's you're creating this pit, but you're the one that's gonna wallow in it. And then when it's all said and done, I can't wait to get one on you, because that's pretty much what the Fiend wants to do. He wants to even the score with the Apex Predator. Can he get it done? Only time will tell.
But also, I want to throw in that as we were talking about this angle, supposedly backstage there were some mistakes that that took place as far as the angle was concerned, because supposedly how we saw it wasn't meant exactly how they wanted to show. So, who's at fault for that? Who screwed up in the last bit of communication? It kind of mind boggles me that, what we saw wasn't exactly what we were supposed to see, but it ended up coming out that way. So I guess the ones who were unfortunately not manipulated were the people in the back who let this, story kind of go crazy. But now I want to see some results of how they're going to capitalize with what happened this past Monday going into this upcoming Monday, because they already got to make it official. Orton and the Fiend coming up for the TLC pay-per-view. They got to have a match already. Doesn't matter if it's tables, chairs, ladders, or whatever element they want to do, no DQ or whatever it is they got to do. But they got to make something official already, because the build is good, but they got to put the slam on it already and get something started, because what we're still looking at from the previous week was pretty much a little bit of a comic book cartoon villainy, and they're trying to make the switches on where the Fiend is a babyface and Orton is the ultimate hero right now. So they did not even a gray area, but a swap in positions, so to speak. But I still can't get that image off of my mind of where 2 weeks ago Orton kind of felt the Fiend behind him, and the Fiend was looking at Orton like with such cartoon villainy. It was all cartoonish at that point, and it's like it's something that makes me laugh. Like if you were watching a Tom and Jerry cartoon, so to speak, that type of funny. But still, it just makes me laugh. Nonetheless, I think that's one of the things that out of so many things that went down that really got my attention right away, and that was a good way to open for starters. But let's get to the 3 matches that took place on Raw, which is I don't know, the 3 matches, of course, that happened 2 weeks ago while we were still talking about 2 weeks ago. AJ Styles versus Orton. Of course, that's where we seen that cartoon villainy clip, that frozen pick, which was funny. Sheamus and Riddle, and of course Bobby Lashley and Keith Lee. So of course we saw who advanced. That was AJ Styles, that was Riddle, and that was Keith Lee. So the triple threat, nonetheless, that was spectacular. That was something different. You saw a big mammoth of a man in Keith Lee taking on, these two, airway flexi wrestlers in Riddle and AJ Styles, and they were all over the place, all 3 of these guys. And at the end, it was a phenomenal one to capitalize for a title shot at Drew McIntyre coming up for TLC. So can't wait to see how that's going to get started also this Monday. But yeah, that was a great triple threat match that we just witnessed, nonetheless. But unfortunately, for the entire show, it went down in ratings. And that was because, I believe, of the Monday Night Football, unfortunately. So it's recorded here that it averaged 1.74 million viewers and did a 0.53 rating with the 18 to 49 demographic. So it's tough because, knowing that Monday Football is around, and yeah, they don't even got football, then maybe they would have got the night. But since there was, go figure, right? So within that same demographic, Raw was placed as number 4 for the night, behind the NFL game. For the record, that was the game between the Seahawks versus the Eagles. That one drew massive viewers, I gotta tell you that. But I ain't into football, so you didn't watch that game, did you? Or you were watching something?
I think I was watching something else.
Yeah, but still, thank God for DVR, because
Yes,
that would, because Raw would be the very last thing that we catch at the end of the night, before we hit the snooze beds. But the breakdown as this follows: at the 8:00 hour, it drew 1.83 million. At 9:00, it drew a 1.76 million, and at 10, it drew a 1.63 million. So yeah, well, that was Raw that that we caught. Of course, once again, Asuka and Lana, they were thinking smart 2 steps ahead, and try to embarrass Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler once again. So, but I don't think anybody cares except for us. But nonetheless, that was another one that we can definitely recall. And let's jump to SmackDown, because SmackDown, of course, they open with a special tribute to Pat Patterson, and they did the moment of silence and the 10 bell tolls. And then, of course, the angle with Roman Reigns, Jey Uso, and now the incorporation of Kevin Owens. Now that's stating that something huge is about to be taking place, and like I predict, it's going to be Kevin Owens, Roman Reigns at TLC. We don't know if all 3 elements are going to be involved, but I think they should make it a no DQ match, just to make it all. Or I think it's already automatic, right? A no DQ.
I have no idea. I mean, or could just be a TLC match itself.
But still, it's using those elements. It's still a no DQ, right?
Yeah, that's
okay. So yeah, I mean that they did the Owens did the challenge the previous week. Roman Reigns answered, but unfortunately, Jey Uso went way ahead of time again, and he decided to give the answer. And unfortunately, he suffered the consequences yet again, with Roman not showing up for that tag team match at the beginning when Jey Uso was making his entrance down. And he showed up whenever he felt like it, because that's how he rolls. And of course, Roman got in and took some shots, but he laid waste to Otis on the outside and whacked him silly with that steel chair and threw him over by the announcement table. And he took Otis out to the point where they had to escort him, and that happened during the commercial break, where they had to escort him out. And it was just Owens against Jey Uso and Roman Reigns in a handicap match. And of course, this is the stupid part that I don't get. The ref could have disqualified Roman Reigns and Jey Uso right there when whacking Otis, and then they had to wait until Roman Reigns did the chokehold or did that special submission on Kevin Owens, and that's when the ref decided to throw it out. That was ridiculous. That was stupid. That was the dislike that I had. I don't know if you agreed with that, but that was a major dislike on how the ref called the match. Yeah, I understand they extended it for as long as they did, but at the end, they should have just went to the end of it, where at the end they were still going to whack out Kevin Owens, and at the end, Jey Uso once again pays the consequences, and Roman Reigns still stands in the middle of the ring.
Well, I just want to say, number one, that when Otis ended up getting hit with the chair, if by logic, if it's a team of 2 against a team of 2, by logic, if one guy hits from one guy from one team hits a guy from the other team, by logic, that match should have been thrown out right there at then. But pretty much what I want to say is what transpired at the end of the match. Now Roman say that because of Jey Uso interjecting in on behalf of Roman, because he wants to prove himself to his cousin, the champion, the tribal chief, if you will, that he could be a valuable asset to the family when he said that we'll respond for anything. But that's one of the reasons why Roman at one point he's not happy with what his cousin was doing, as well as the stigma from Survivor Series is still affecting Roman, if you will. But the one thing that I could not fathom, I couldn't understand, is how come at the end, I mean, when Roman pretty much said, "Okay, I'll beat up Otis with a chair. I'll beat up Kevin Owens with a chair." He ended and added to them. He also beat up his own cousin with a chair. I understand that there's consequences. I understand that there's a price to pay, but to torture your own cousin like that, quite frankly, that's just wrong. I mean, you could have just done a more less painful punishment to a family member. You could have just had them say, "Oh yeah." Rather than you doing matches, I can have you in my beck and call. You could just wear a sign with like you could wear a shirt with a sign that says I'm a doofus, but to physically provoke your own cousin like that, perfectly, that's you're showing how cool you are, how really cool you are. I'm gonna say I'm not, because for the record, does Roman have a right to be cruel? Frankly. And in his day he should, but that cruel, no, that's crossing the line. He could have just said, "Oh yeah, you could be our personal butler. You could just wear the shirt. You could wear a hat that says done." So even if it isn't Samoan, anything like, yeah, you want to embarrass your own cousin, go ahead, but get physical with him, like, quite frankly, that's a little bit too far.
Yeah. Well, I'm still interested in the angle, despite how Jey Uso has to suffer the penalties from the head of the table on what he deems, is disrespectful or insulting or anything of that nature. But he's still intact, remaining headstrong and trying to prove to everybody in that Smackdown locker room of who is the tribal chief and how he conducts himself with his performance in the ring, with interviews, how to be interviewed, and everything that comes and everything that comes with it. That's how interesting that character is to me as a viewer, and to see how grasping it's going to get even more as the weeks are yet to come. Besides that, they did a nice 6-man tag of the Pat Patterson memorial tribute to him, and it involved all the former Intercontinental champions plus the Intercontinental champion right now, so to speak, Sami Zayn. I love the way how Talking Smack ended, where Caleb Braxton out of the chute while interviewing Sami Zayn last, how they, like I said, went out of the chute and talk about Pat Patterson and how Pat Patterson was a fan of Sami Zayn, not just coincidentally because, they're both French Canadians, which is, a coincidence or whatever the heck you want to call it, but how influential and how much of a difference Pat Patterson was for Sami Zayn in Sami Zayn's career. I just loved how the show closed out and Sami Zayn, kind of, went out of his character and went into his talk, professionally and personally about Pat Patterson and how much and how Pat Patterson was the one that defended Sami Zayn and how much he believed in his talents, back when he was in NXT, and just how how much of a difference it made for him, what a jokester he was, and everything. It was cool to hear Sammy speak a little bit. Besides that, they showed the tweet of what he tweeted originally, when the news broke out about Pat Patterson's passing. But it was nice to see that they did a tribute for him. Sami Zayn won the match still. Well, actually, no, the good guys won. The good guys won despite of the loss with Nakamura, Sami Zayn, and Dolph Ziggler. Big E, Rey Mysterio, and there was one more. Daniel Bryan, yes, there you go. So yeah, former Intercontinental champions plus the reigning champion Sami Zayn. They did a great tribute to Pat Patterson. That was very touching. I'm pretty sure Pat Patterson up in the heavens appreciated that one too. He got the best seat in the house for that. As well, the angle with Carmella and Sasha Banks, that was more like if that was kind of like a Love and Hip Hop episode of real life and how these chicks get down. When I saw that those camera shots, Carmella in her own space, the SmackDown Women's Champion Sasha Banks in her own space, is it me or does it look like they were separated at birth? They kind of look alike.
They kind of look
alike. Because here's my take. Sasha Banks is staring. It's like staring in a mirror. Sasha Banks is staring at Carmella like if that was something that Sasha Banks would have envisioned of doing for herself. Like if she can be at that stage in that caliber in that position where Carmella's at. Carmella is looking at her side of the mirror and wishes that she would be where she could be boss, where she could be champion, even though Carmella's been champion before. But Jesus, it looks like if they were, I don't know why it never occurred to the WWE, but they could have been like a sister package. They could have been like twins because they almost look alike. I mean, if you would have that recorded on your DVR, just pause on that shot where there's just no words and they'd be looking at the camera. They could easily pass like if they were sisters.
Yeah, because well, you say that. Look, I for me, it's like how they sounded, how they barked at each other back and forth. You say like, oh yeah, Carmella says to Sasha, Carmella says to Sasha. I'm sorry, Carmella says to Sasha, I'm untouchable. No one can get me. Like no one can be at my level. And Sasha retorts back and says, you're not at my level, Carmella. I'm the boss. I'm one of the best. One of the best women's wrestlers currently in the WWE today, because that's pretty much how it is right now. It's like I don't know if you could call it envy, I don't know if you could call it jealousy, but it's pretty much, it's like you got two women's wrestlers with different processes achieving different accolades, but it's like they want to be alike. It's like, but pretty much right now Sasha is currently the SmackDown Women's Champion, but from it looks like, it's like Carmella can't wait to get back in the spotlight. If it has to be at the expense of Sasha Banks, so be it. But that segment truly is priceless. And yes, because like I mentioned, and like I mentioned, they're like twin separated breaths, because you say it's how they look. I say it's because how they sound, the way how they barked at each other.
Well, yeah. On top of that, this, like I said, it's like watching an episode of reality series, like for example, Love and Hip Hop Atlanta or some along those lines. That where you can insult each other, you can call each other bitch, asshole, and all that. Like what you see on a reality series, it's like really, it looks, it's like if it acts like a duck and it sounds like a duck, it's a duck.
It's a duck,
and they're acting like wanks,
yeah.
That's all they are, back and forth. It's like, okay, can we move on to the next thing, please? I mean, it's cool and all, but it's like, come on, man. I'm just glad that was over with. That would have been something like if my DVR was divided into segments for every single segment of the show. I was like, okay, here a little bit. Oh, next. But yeah. So yeah, how SmackDown ended with the ratings. The reports were in, and it states here also from Wrestling Observer, after dipping below the mark for the last Friday's episode, Thanksgiving weekend, SmackDown climbed back over 2 million viewers this week in the overnight ratings, averaging 2.029 million on Fox last night. So last night it was averaged 2.053 million viewers in the first hour, and then dropped 2% to 2.004 million in the second hour, despite advertising Roman Reigns and Jey Uso versus Kevin Owens and Otis for the main event. The final numbers were released in recent weeks for the final viewership that has climbed about 10% on average, which would put SmackDown around the 2.2 million mark if that holds true for this week. Aside from last week, that would be the lowest overnight number for the show since October 16th. Within the 18 to 49 demographic, last night's SmackDown episode averaged a 0.5 rating. And that ties to other network shows that go second place. Like, for example, ABC Shark Tank and so and so. But yeah, the overnight demo number for SmackDown was down 9.1% from last week. And then so it was cool that that this show got back up from Thanksgiving, because it was obvious. And also, didn't they had a football game as well? Thanksgiving weekend?
No.
Oh, okay. But still, I mean, it was cool. It was cool that they got back up on the ratings and such. So that was cool for SmackDown this past Friday. Now we move on to the Wednesday Night Wars. We're going to address NXT first. Already this Sunday, War Games. We already got the matches set. The only matches that I recall coming up, of course, are the 2 War Game matches. The men's teams will feature Undisputed Era versus Pat McAfee and Company, which involves, of course, the tag team champions Oney Lorcan and Pat Burchill. And, of course, that guy who's been on mute ever since he came back, but he was so high volume on Destruction until he decided to speak a little bit short and sweet on the microphone when him, Pat McAfee, and of course the NXT Tag Team Champions come out, and it's like, oh damn, he decided to unmute his mute button. And I'm talking about the former NXT champion. That would be none other than
the Bruiserweight.
The Bruiserweight, yes, Pete Dunne. So to me, that match is going to be very exciting. Hopefully, we get to see the Undisputed Era dominate one more time, because ever since the War Games concept came back or got relaunched for NXT on the WWE Network, priceless. And you can put that next to the previous War Games, like when it took place in WCW. Those were classic gems, and the matches that took place for NXT takeovers, the War Games that happen every November, now December for this year, are classic gems as well, and those will definitely be archived and revisited on the network for as many times as you want. I'm looking forward to another classic with Undisputed Era and McAfee and Company. The women's War Games as well. Candice LeRae's team, which features herself, Raquel Gonzalez, Dakota Kai, Toni Storm. That's everyone.
Yes, that's her team.
From her team versus Shotzi Blackheart's team, which on NXT we didn't get to see who was going to be a part of her team. We only saw that on YouTube with 2-minute clips with the ad of War Games, and of course during commercial breaks on the NXT shows in the last show on Wednesday to conclude the matchup that took place this past Wednesday, where it involved the return of Yo Shirai. So it was classic the way all of this was brought up nicely. So on Shotzi Blackheart's team, Ember Moon, the former NXT Women's Champion. That would be none other than
Rhea Ripley.
Rhea Ripley, yes. And to conclude it all beautifully, the NXT Women's Champion, Aew Shirai. So, yeah, I was kind of figuring that would be the last piece of the puzzle to conclude it all beautifully, because on top of that, Aew Shirai is not defending her title, but she's a part of a team where, these women felt the effects of Candice LeRae's team, because they did a beautiful setup as a pretty much came in alliance to break down these 4 women, and just to get them back and as one to go and face off the likes of Candice LeRae, Raquel Gonzalez, Toni Storm, and Dakota Kai. So we've seen last year's Women's War Games live. I remember that we were there live, which was awesome. We got to see our first NXT takeover featuring War Games. That one will live in our heads forever. To Crazy Does, if you're watching this episode, thank you very much, for help us pitch in to go to that event and for joining us as well. Those are epic memories that will live forever, and of course we'll always revisit on the network. But now 2020 is going to be, to me, is going to be a bigger deal watching it, of course, on the network, and hopefully we'll get to see the Undisputed Era win their match, for Team Shotzi to win their War Games match. Then, of course, the Triple Threat North American Championship will be on the line. Leon Ruff, who is on Cloud 9 right now, because, yes, he's got the championship and he's engaged to the to the female NXT referee. Forgot her name, and I apologize. He will defend his title against the former champion, Johnny Gargano, and, of course, the infamy of archery. That would be
Damian Priest.
Damian Priest, yes, that's right. So that one's going to be an interesting match as well. Can Leon Ruff do what it takes to show the world that he's not a joke, that him winning the NXT North American Championship is not a fluke, and that he can prove Johnny Gargano and Damian Priest wrong? So definitely looking forward to that. More or less, this week's NXT episode was decent. It had a beautiful finish leading up to the War Games event coming up tomorrow night. So just to let everybody know, we are not going to be doing a live reaction to that one. We're just going to pretty much relax. I'm going to watch it nonetheless, so for next week's episode, we can definitely give you our opinion and everything of how that pay-per-view went down. And I don't think this is the only takeover that has happened on a Sunday, which normally takeovers would take place on a Saturday night. But they decided for this year to do it on a Sunday night. So we'll definitely give you the review and our opinion of TakeOver War Games on the next episode of Wrestling Weekend Recap. Jade, now the moment has come to address the elephant in the room. We got to talk about AEW Dynamite in a whole different perspective. The headlines are out. Winner is coming. Sting debuts in AEW. Hell froze over. On top of that, we got to witness a new AEW World Champion in Kenny Omega. And for what? So that I got to set my DVR to watch Impact this Tuesday night? Are you kidding me? For real? This is the big surprise that Tony Khan has set for the wrestling fans? Shoot, man. Come on. I'm not disappointed at it. But if this is one of the many surprises to expect in the months to come or already in 2021, damn, man, this is really turning the wrestling world upside down. Not in a bad way. And sorry if I misled with that dictative voice or that, that tone of voice. But now AEW is not playing around. Now they're definitely smartly are showing their cards. They're playing their game just right. But Jesus, man, this episode of AEW Dark, and by the way, I don't have the numbers, but I heard that this week during the Wednesday Night Wars, automatically that because of these two polls, AEW won the wars this week.
Well, let me just point out that for those of you watching, if you check your sites for the record, you heard nothing from us. The rumors were swirling around that the Icon Sting was gonna sign with AEW, and for the record, I'm just gonna say I kind of dismissed it because they were just rumors until we saw the telecast last Wednesday from Jacksonville, in that scene right there with Darby Allin in that tag team match with Cody and Darby Allin and Team Taz. All of a sudden things go until all of a sudden the lights go out, and then right there the graphic goes on, and the name, and yes, in the flesh, the Icon Sting emerges from the entrance. Right there when he goes into the ring and he stares face to face with the American Nightmare, with Darby Allin, and with someone who is very well acquainted with the Enforcer, Arn Anderson. Now pretty much what is gonna transpire come this Wednesday on Dynamite. What is Sting's role in AEW? That's pretty much what we all can't wait to see happen. Now, as far as the main event win of that match with Jon Moxley with Kenny Omega, quite frankly, I did expect a clinic between these two because this was a rivalry that pretty much stemmed from last year when these two met, ever since Jon Moxley signed with AEW. And pretty much I know from day one that if there was one thing Kenny Omega wanted to aspire to be, and that is to be a world champion. And truly, the way how that match was orchestrated, and quite frankly, I did not expect Jon Moxley to lose it that quick. I can't expect him to lose it like at least by the beginning of next year. But what it is what it is. And the puzzling thing was that if for those of you who recall last Wednesday's telecast, sitting next to JR, Excalibur, and Tony Schiavone was Don Callis, a top-notch executive within Impact Wrestling.
Plus, Kenny Omega's best friend.
Yes, Kenny Omega's best friend ever since their New Japan days. But nonetheless, once they were going to, and then once the John threw Kenny into the heater because it is cold. It's not as cold as here in Chicago, but cold nonetheless. And then Don Callis gets up and yells at the referee. It says like he said he can't go on. Unbeknownst to Jon Moxley, there was the microphone right at the left corners, one of the bottom left corners, where Kenny grabs it and then pow, pretty much busts John's head open. John was unable to mount a comeback. He gets the pin and the belt, and all of a sudden, Kenny leaves with Don Callis, and right before they left the Daily's place
with the AEW World
with
Battle,
the AEW title, yes. Alex Marvez wanted to get word from Kenny and Don Callis said, if you wanna find out, you have to tune in Tuesday, referencing Impact Wrestling. And I'm like, oh my god, it's like, and I said to myself, have I just witnessed the heist of the century? Kenny Omega just defeated John Moxley for the AEW championship, and he's taking it over to Impact, which for all intents and purposes is a competitor. And I'm like, oh my god, what's gonna happen?
It's like saying Bart Simpson on the side of Law and Order. Has the world got topsy turvy?
I'm like,
exactly like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because for those of you people watching us right now, you felt the same thing as we felt when we watched that broadcast, and I'm like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? It's like AEW is gonna work side by side with Impact Wrestling. God knows what's gonna happen, if it could lead to something bad or it could lead to something good. Hopefully, I'm saying it could lead to something good.
To recap, winter is coming. Hell froze over. Not just with Sting debuting in AEW, but Kenny Omega becoming AEW World Champion to take it all the way to Impact Wrestling for next Tuesday. One night before the next episode of AEW Dynamite. What is Kenny Omega going to do over there with the title and explain? That's the biggest question mark of them all. But as we're on the subject of AEW's special Winners Coming episode, it averaged, and this is the result of numbers for the Wednesday Night War this week, it averaged 913,000 views on TNT. It featured, of course, the main event and also the surprise debut of the icon, the Stinger. WWE NXT averaged 658,000 views on the USA Network. And of course, it was the go-home show leading to NXT TakeOver War Games. Dynamite was up 28.6% in total viewers from the previous week. The show also did a 0.42 rating with the 18 to 49 demo. The best number Dynamite has done in that category since October of last year. Can you believe that? From October of last year, the 18 to 49 number was up 61.5% from last week. NXT was down 7.6% in total views and 20% in the 18 to 49 demo. The overall viewership for this past Wednesday's show for Dynamite was the highest on a night when NXT was also airing since March 18th. The first show of the pandemic era that featured the AEW debuts of Matt Hardy and Brody Lee. Combined Wednesday Night Wrestling viewership this week was 1.571 million, up to 10.5% from last week and the highest since October 28, which was the night of NXT Halloween Havoc. The combined 1849 demo rating of 0.58 beat Raw this week by 10%, and Dynamite on its own came up with 14% of tying the third hour of Raw in that demo. Year over year, Dynamite was up 7.3% in overall viewers and 31.3% in the 18 to 49 demo. NXT was down 44.8% in overall views and 22.1% in that demographic. Can you believe that? This was the highest rated episode of Dynamite from last year's episode. Within the month of October, from last year to this year. Crazy, huh? Because they pulled a fast one. Because AEW decided to pull a fast one to take away the thunder from War Games. They thought smart. I give AEW that one. And here's another funny note that I don't think anyone has pointed out. Just when Undertaker decides to retire precisely during the 30-year mark of Survivor Series, then all of a sudden here comes Sting. Out of retirement, I might add. From WWE. Because the last time Sting was seen was at the Hall of Fame. For WWE's Hall of Fame. And now all of a sudden here he is in AEW. The real question is, what do they got planned for Sting? What is Sting's role going to be in AEW, just like Jade said? From what I understand, from what I heard in one of the video reports, is that chances are Sting might be involved in a match or two, but I think that's all that he can give as far as performing in the ring. Now, having a sense of presence, doing promos and stuff like that, that could be the only niche too, but Sting still got it. He has not lost any side of what he can do best as far as in-mic skills are concerned. That I believe, because I am a devoted fan of Sting since the Crow days. And it's no secret that video of the history of Sting from the greatest superstars of the 90s on this channel is still going strong, still being commented on it today. Guys, thank you very much for that. Keep it going. And that's letting Stamford, Connecticut know. Ooh, it's letting him know that this one's going on strong. And may I point out while I'm on the subject, because I got to say this before I forget. It's because of my video that I posted on this channel that Stamford, Connecticut decided to post the documentary of the greatest superstars of the 90s onto the WWE network. By the way, you're welcome, Stamford, Connecticut. This better not be a reason to shut me down, I'll tell you that. Because if I wouldn't have posted out this video, you guys wouldn't even never decided to post the freaking greatest superstars of the 90s onto the network. And here's a really good kicker. That happened all in 2013 when the actual documentary came out on the market, and I got the DVD to prove it from 2009. All of that are facts. All of that are facts. And if anybody decides to ask, I'll even bring out the DVD and show the year to prove it. Or I'm pretty sure you guys, if you got the copy of it, see the year on the back of that thing, 2009. And why the hell did it took this long for the network to post it out on their network in 2013? Exactly. Back to the original question. Now that Sting has made his way to AEW, what are they going to do with him? Why did he came up precisely in the angle with Team Taz, Cody, and his side of the American Nightmare family? And it's no secret, you know, Sting has already worked with Taz before back in TNA. I'm pretty sure for all of these kids, and I call them kids because that's what they are. I mean, you know, we're still a bunch of old school, you know, fans, you know, old fart fans. But it's the truth because we're watching these kids prosper, you know, which they got the platform for. And on top of all things, TNT, Sting comes back into the TNT network. The last time he was seen, March 26, 2001, when him and the Nature Boy Ric Flair on Nitro had their last match. Because that's how Nitro, during its inauguration episode from the Mall of America, which was in Minneapolis, Minnesota, they had a match. Sting versus the Nature Boy Ric Flair in one of their segments to start on Nitro. So I forgot what was the count in years, but it's been this long since Sting was seen on TNT. And he decided to make his show this past Wednesday. And by the way, that was awesome. It's great to see Sting back in front of a camera for wrestling on television. And in all places, TNT on top of that. So, because even I'd be wondering, what's going on with Sting and all of that, because stuff with him has been very quiet. We heard talks about him owning the Dallas Cowboys or try to own the Dallas Cowboys and stuff like that. I'm like, really? No plans on going back to wrestling even? Or try to poke at the Undertaker and say, hey, maybe you and I, we should do a match. But things happen for a reason, right? So, and then also the news broke out. A multi-year deal with AEW. Tony Khan offered Sting a multi-year contract with AEW. So Sting is locked in for a good number of years. Very good number of years. So, like I said, it's really good to see Sting back on television. The real question is, what is AEW going to do with him? Are they gonna do something important with him? They got to do something really good with him and bring the best out of him so that Sting's usage for AEW, obviously that's going to help them build their company even more with the status of a Hall of Famer and former 9-time WCW champion.
I think.
It would be of excellent tutelage, from Sting to all of those AEW wrestlers that I'm pretty sure are satiated, to have an icon of his stature on their roster. So going into the story, also from Wrestling Observer, it states Sting is now all elite. The former WCW and WWE star made his AEW debut this past Wednesday. Winner is coming edition of Dynamite. Coming out to the ring as Team Taz was beating down TNT champion Darby Allin, Cody Rhodes, Dustin Rhodes, and Arn Anderson following a tag team match. As the beatdown was happening, Daily's place went black and images of frozen landscapes appeared on the big screens. Sting's name then emerged, painted up and dressed as the classic Crow version of his character, complete with a baseball bat and a brand new AEW shirt. By the way, did you know that new AEW Sting shirt has been the hottest selling piece of merchandise this week on shopaew.com?
Man, talk about holiday joy.
And normally I believe any member of the Elite, whether it be Cody or Kenny Omega or the Bucks or even Hangman Adam Page, any of those, I believe those guys are the ones that are making more money, or even Orange Cassidy, or any of those recognized and top stars right now, or even the Inner Circle for that matter, Chris Jericho too. They were hottest wrestlers with hot items on that website, and supposedly it was stated for the record that normally AEW is a company that would make wrestling t-shirts, from what I understood. And yet, the number one piece of merchandise this week was Sting's new shirt. And you know me, when it comes to merchandise and what would be the hottest piece of item. Now, if they got another, it's good and all, but I don't gravitate that easily, with that shirt, unless if it's something iconic like a simple scorpion and a little AEW logo or something like that. That would be cool. Or even there has to be more likeness with Sting as far as merchandise is concerned and shirts as concerned as well. I still got the old WWE shirts, the red one, the black one with the Scorpion logo on it. And I even have the black sleeves on the white shirt, the Black Knight Sting shirt from WWE. I still have those. I still wear them. Those are classics. I even still have the one from '99, for Christ's sakes. The one that I got from Kmart, where it had the pocket Scorpion logo, and on the back it says the man known as Sting. Mm-hmm. I still have that one, and I still wear it to this day. So that just goes to show how much of a Sting fan I am from the Crow days. If I would have heard of Sting as the colorful Sting back then, or if we ever got to watch him, I probably would have been a fan of his from way back when, before the Crow even eliminated to Nitro at that time, back in '96, late '96. So what was I? And then back to the story. He then walked around the ring and stared at Anderson, Cody, and Allen before walking to the back, and snow fell on the set. This was his first appearance on TNT since the final episode of Nitro 18 years ago. So 18 years. You know, that's kind of funny. 18 years. And how long did the rivalry with Sting and Hogan went when Hulk went from Black and Yellow to Hollywood?
A year and a half. 18 months.
And when Sting became the Crow, 18 months. Yeah, that's kind of symbolistic, right? 18 months, that rivalry for all of that to culminate, and now it's 18 years. Then 18 years ago, he comes back to TNT, and his face is seen on AEW Dynamite. Following the commercial break, Jim Ross announced that Tony Khan has signed Sting to a full-time, multi-year contract. And it was announced later that Sting next week will speak. So here's the part that I don't get. Why you want to bring Sting and have him talk? Why you want to bring Sting into AEW and have him talk the following week? And that is where I think AEW went wrong. They should have him on mute for a little bit, just a little bit. You know, give that enticing of the classic Sting, for Christ's sakes. Come on. And then after that, when you got the fans at the point where it's like you want to hear from him, you want to hear his voice, you want to hear him talk, you want to hear him say his verbiage to whoever in the wrestling world or to whoever in AEW. Just something gripping, something enticing. But you want to have him out to speak next week? What, just for what? To hear him, why he decided to come into AEW? Eventually, we all want to hear it, but Jesus, make us wait for it. Don't just give it to us next week, Unless if you got fans out there that, finally, I can't wait to hear what Sting is going to say. I mean, I'm a Sting fan. I would love to hear what he's got to say. But already next week? Come on. Make us wait for it. Make us beg for it at least. No, you're going to give it to us next week? I mean, that's my opinion. I don't know about you.
Well, here's what I have to say, and I sort of agree with you that it would be best if Sting was wrapped up in a certain mistake like how he was back in WCW years ago where he didn't speak because his actions spoke for him, and that mistake grew more and more. But the one thing I'm more interested in is pretty much from what I saw last Wednesday when Sting came out after the tag match. I'm possibly hinting this because like back in years ago, Sting has always been as what was quoted in his promo. He was always the purveyor of God, the voice of silence on the mission of justice. And so pretty much is like there's a certain someone that Sting, what I'm not saying from a wrestling scene, he cannot stand. It's like there's someone that he believes a certain philosophy and he doesn't agree with it, which is why his rivalry with Hulk Hogan was one of the greatest rivalries WCW had to offer. Now, pretty much everybody's asking who does Sting have a pet peeve with coming AEW? I'm gonna say it was the one person who Sting had probably had a rivalry ever since TNA, because these two are of different philosophies. Since Sting is from the NWA, because NWA WCW philosophy, because before it was WCW, it was Jim Crockett Promotions under the NWA banner, and the person who pretty much
the National Wrestling Alliance.
Yes,
we don't want fans to think, oh, but then again, we're wrestling fans. We know what NWA we're talking about. Yes, the National Wrestling Alliance.
Yes, that's why.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's why I specify by mentioning the promotion itself. But nonetheless, if there's one person who Sting had a pet peeve with, a clash of philosophies, because this is the woman who pretty much was, because like for years Sting was the flag bearer of WCW ever since Jim Crockett Promotions became WCW, yes. And pretty much he has a clash of philosophy with the man who, for all intents and purposes, earned the right to become the flag bearer of ECW, and that's Taz. And that's what I'm saying, it's a clash of philosophy, because Sting was bred on a certain philosophy. Taz was bred on a different philosophy. He's hardcore, extreme, very gritty. And that pretty much is like these two philosophies don't go very well, because I'm not saying either from a personal standpoint or from a professional standpoint that these two met each other, but right off the bat they just don't click. And if they bring that aspect from TNA all the way now to AEW to say, okay, if there's one person Sting can't stand, either personally or professionally, being Taz, what will happen come this month, possibly leading into next year, to say what will be Sting's role within AEW? Could it be against Taz? Who knows? The only thing we have to say is we probably might find out Wednesday.
I believe that on a professional level, no, actually on a personal level, I believe Taz respects Sting for what he's done for the wrestling business. And I'm pretty sure Sting can respect Taz for what he's done for the wrestling business as well, despite that, Taz dealt with everything on an extreme level. And of course, Taz already knows what Sting has done on a professional level in a traditional manner. Because, let's not forget, back to the greatest superstars of the 90s, Taz was the host of that entire documentary talking about the wrestlers of the 90s. And he spoke great volumes on Sting. And especially if you rewatch the clip, you hear Taz's voice talking about Sting and what he's done in his career in WCW during the 90s. So I'm pretty sure that there's respect there in some form or fashion. So back to the professional level and what we're seeing on television, I think that these two would definitely have a great clash on the sense that, Taz comes from a different way of thinking as far as, wrestling is concerned, because he dealt with that FTW mental attitude. And of course, we know Sting is tradition. He's old school, because that's the way he is, and we love him for it. But we can't discount what Taz has done. I love Taz back in his old school days of ECW, when he was ECW's world champion, how he became the suplex machine. He was just outstanding, man. He took on all comers. Doesn't matter how big or small. I remember him facing Bam Bam Bigelow, God rest his soul. Him facing Mike Awesome, the one event where Mike Awesome backstabbed ECW, went to WCW, but still came back and had the ECW title, even though he never showed it on Nitro, but he was ECW's champion. And that one ECW event that took place after that Nitro episode, Taz came in to fend for ECW while he was still under contract with WWE. So at that time, Awesome was contracted with WCW, signed a contract with them. Taz was already with WWE, signed a contract with them. These two different wrestling players that were known in ECW, now with two big conglomerates of the respective companies, WWE, WCW, are facing inside of an ECW ring in an ECW event for the ECW championship. To me, That's one of those events that can never be replicated again. Unless if we get to see that now with AEW involving Impact. So that's something, maybe we could look for, depending on what Kenny Omega's got to say coming up this Tuesday on Access TV. But back to Sting and Taz and what is Sting's involvement with this angle, if he is going to be further involved with this angle and why he showed up in the first place. Yeah, two different styles, two different views. They have been involved before with in TNA, I believe. But I believe in all due respect that there is a level of respect on a professional level and also on a personal level. But storyline wise, I think that's going to be the best television that we can ever get if Sting is already involved in something. But it all depends on what we're going to hear from him this upcoming Wednesday and what's the reason for him being in AEW. Well, before we get to talk about the Kenny Omega story, I want to talk about the other things that took place on Dynamite. For example, besides the debut of Sting and of course the main event match, also, what's going on in the tag team division? There was an untitled match that featured the Young Bucks and TH2, I believe. And how very soon we're going to see the team of TH2, the Hybrid 2, are going to have a shot at the AEW tag team titles and the Young Bucks. So, can't wait for that. Plus, of course, what is set to culminate for next Wednesday as well. Orange Cassidy is going to face MJF for the Diamond Ring after what we've seen in that Diamond Ring Battle Royal. Here, I thought MJF was going to lose it, to be honest. But it didn't went down that way. But to my surprise, Orange Cassidy still stayed throughout the entire Battle Royal, and he is one of the finalists. So I can see Cassidy get that damn ring. Hopefully he does. But then again, if it's not meant to be, then MJF's obviously going to have that in that ring and use it as a weapon for later use. Nonetheless, they're going to face off for the ring this upcoming Wednesday. Also, Jericho has declared an ultimatum. Jericho has declared an ultimatum for the Inner Circle. Either they're going to band together or the Inner Circle is no more. So Chris Jericho has declared an ultimatum for the Inner Circle following the events of Wednesday. If they can't come to an agreement and work together, the group will be disbanded forever. 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 Do you think they will disband or they're going to stay together?
Quite honestly, I don't know, because ever since that battle royal, when it looked like the inner circle was unified, and their best interest was to, well, I'm gonna say their best interest, but MGF's best interest was to protect, his ring, make sure it stays on his hand. It looked like all of a sudden everything started going haywire because with him and with Wardlow and with Sammy Guevara, the only representatives of the Inner Circle in that battle royal, it looked like there was a master plan going on. But then all of a sudden, ever since once that match was over, and it was all said and done, eventually MJF will face Orange Cassidy next Wednesday. But all of a sudden, Sammy Guevara was very livid, took his frustrations on MJF, and that prompted all the other members to come out and try to maintain the peace. And that was then where Chris Jericho said he had enough and said, "Come this Wednesday there will be an ultimatum. Will everybody put differences aside and work together, or it's all over?" But yes, before MJF's induction of sorts within the circle, because rightfully so, he did earn it. Because say that ever since Full Gear, Jericho said, "I'm not gonna insert you to my group just like that. If you want in, you have to earn it." And technically, MJF did not earn it, but unfortunately, where it is where it is, and he is in the group.
He pretty much cheated to get into it.
Yes, but the issue right now is that it's well, it's not so much Santana, but Sammy Guevara still had his reservations towards MJF being in the group. But if the only way that can happen is like if the inner circle is still gonna hang out for at least another year or so, then they have to find a way to put differences aside. Sammy Guevara is gonna have to put his dislike for MJF aside. However, if this is officially the end of the inner circle, come Wednesday, I don't know what's gonna transpire. I mean, yes, the inner circle since the inception of I'm not saying since the inception of AEW, but ever since not since the inception of AEW, but ever since the inception of Dynamite, they established themselves as one of the top heel groups in AEW. And quite frankly, as many people would say, MJF doesn't fit the mold. But he's little by little trying to earn his way. But nonetheless, can these wrestlers find a way to keep the peace and say, okay, I'm willing to rely on you, you're willing on me, despite everything that can happen, what can happen? Because quite frankly, I don't know what's going to happen this Wednesday.
Well, to be honest, MJF never needed the inner circle, and the inner circle never needed MJF. What we have right here is obviously egos that are too big for the britches to even be in this group. So I say they should disband, but then one way or another, I kind of got the feeling that they're going to try to hold it on just a little bit more until it implodes in themselves, and then that's where it's really going to break up, because MJF and Chris Jericho, ever since MJF was a part of the inner circle, they've been bringing out a lot of entertainment. And I say that with a pinch of salt because the facts are true, and I see it on these reports online that Jericho and MJF are just perfect. When you put these two together and they can bring out an entertaining segment of whatever it is that they do. Doesn't matter if it's a debate, doesn't matter if it's a musical, doesn't matter if it's a powwow session, doesn't matter if it's a Jeopardy, Family Feud, a talk show, or whatever it is that you can picture Jericho and MJF do together just to knock it off each other. It's guaranteed to be entertaining, and I praise MJF and Jericho together. I think these two can make a go of each other, even if the inner circle's no more, to be honest. Whether it be something they can get high on each other and later turn into a backstabbing and end up in a match, doesn't matter. But I don't think they can hold it together. But if AEW plays this smart, they got to do something where they can keep all of these guys together for just a little bit more until the inner circle implodes within itself, and then there is no way to put this group back together. Just no way. Because MJF is too much, and you got two powerhouses in Jake Hager and Wardlow. You can't have two. It's like having Kevin Nash and the Giant in the NWO. You can't have two giants. All the two giants are formidable for the group, but then that's going to take WCW down in all of the roster. So imagine those two in the spot of Jake Hager and Wardlow. You got those two guys are powerhouses. Wardlow with his how chiseled and how hard he's built and how what a massive guy he could be. Jake Hager is a wrestler. He's also an MMA fighter. Does a little boxing and all of that, and he's very decorated, very athletic. But you can't have two freaking powerhouses in one group. It's just impossible. So that's why those guys have been staring at each other ever since Wardlow and MJF came into this group. And of course, MJF is one guy that nobody likes. Nobody likes. Not even for Ortiz's sake, not even for Sammy Hager's sake. Those are the only two who's got the gripe with MJF. And they want MJF out. They probably don't give a damn about Wardlow, but since Wardlow's and MJF is a package, they want them gone. But my opinion, they got to do something where they gotta still stay together, just to hold on to that group a little bit more until the group implodes in itself, and then no way to repair the damage. They all got to scatter. But even if you got to keep Jericho and MJF together to do skits or whatever until they have a match and then they go at each other's throats, well, then that'll be grandish, so to speak. Moving on. Also, FTR will face the newly named Varsity Blonde. So there goes your next Hollywood Blondes concept.
Half of it.
Half of the of it. But yeah, the Varsity Blondes when it comes to Griff Garrison and Brian Pillman Jr. Also for next week, Lance Archer will team with the Lucha Brothers. That's a first. Against Eddie Kingston, Butcher, and Blade. Because, of course, Eddie Kingston and his guys, they wasted on Pac. So I don't know if he's officially out. I haven't heard any reports. But Lance Archer's stepping up to the plate because, of course, there's a gripe between him and Eddie Kingston with the whole what was the event before Full Gear? All Out. And they had that battle royal. Eddie Kingston to claim that he never lost in that battle royal. He was never eliminated. Lance Archer, of course, he was the winner of it all. So they got something to gripe about after all these months. After that pay-per-view was done with, there's still something to gripe about with Kingston and Archer. Also, Dustin Rhodes will face off 10 of the Dark Order, and that's Preston Vance, known as 10. Abaddon returns to action. She was recently injured during a match that was taped on Dynamite that never aired. So we finally get to see Abaddon in action. And obviously she's aiming for the AEW Women's World Title and Hikaru Shida. And I guess it's a little bit too fast, but I did praise on Abaddon that she would make it to Dynamite. And I think she could be contender worthy. I think she could be championship worthy as well. But everything at its pace. So even if they decide to give the belt to her, cool. But let's see a build up. Let's see how all of that goes. I mean, we got a great start so far. Seeing the return of Abaddon, spooking out the hell of Hikaru Shida. So they got to build that up just a little bit more, and that way we can see one heck of a match between Abaddon and the AEW Women's Champion in Hikaru Shida. So now let's talk about the very last thing and what we witnessed on the main event of AEW Dynamite. The match with Kenny Omega versus Jon Moxley for that AEW World's Championship. Now, the match of it all, it was back and forth. I mean, it was awesome from what it was worth. But to our surprise, the way the damn match ended, what the literally, what the did we see? And like I said in the middle of this episode, this is forcing me to literally DVR the next episode of Impact coming up this Tuesday, just to see what the heck is Kenny Omega and Don Callis up to. What are they going to say for that segment? And they and even Access TV already promoted it. They did like a promotion, not a video promotion, but like an ad promotion, because I seen it on YouTube. I'm all like, wow, this is really, really serious stuff. So now, as I dig up for the report, now we got to talk about what the heck is going to happen here, because this is one of many surprises, obviously, that Tony Khan has already tweeted out within the last number of weeks. Surprises of many. This is another one. Sting was one at the start of the not the start of the night, but already almost getting into the end of the first hour, getting into the second hour. And then we see the finish to the main event. And then, of course, all of that was in the works, obviously, because Don Callis wasn't just out there for the heck of it the first time around watching Kenny Omega's match. Now, all of a sudden, we see him calling and watching this main event that featured Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley. So all of this obviously wasn't an accident. All of this was neatly planned and shocked the hell out of us. And I'm already in the report right now. So as you can see, there's the ad that I got right here before me. And it states AEW World Champion Kenny Omega will appear this Tuesday, Impact Wrestling, Tuesday, 8/7 Central on Access TV. And there's another thing. And we haven't watched much of Access TV because, when we watched Access TV, that's when we had satellite. And now that we got Sling, to our surprise, they had Access TV. You started watching because of Impact and all that when you were previously watching it on Twitch.
Yeah.
So now I wonder, the last time Kenny Omega was seen on Access TV, that was on a replay of Wrestle Kingdom, right? It was Wrestle Kingdom before the launch of AEW in later months. Actually, at the following year, which was 19, so it was 2018, I believe. That was the last time Kenny Omega was seen on Access TV precisely. So this is already about a year or two later, and now Kenny Omega is going to be seen on Access TV now live, because all those New Japan clips that featured Kenny Omega when he was a part of the Bullet Club and such, that was when it was, pre-taped. All of that was taped. All of that was archived. But now Kenny Omega is going to speak live on Impact and on Access TV. So that's another thing I want to point out. So as I'm in the report, it states also from the Wrestling Observer, Impact Wrestling has begun their big push for new AEW World Champion Kenny Omega's appearance this Tuesday on Access TV. They tweeted Friday that Omega will appear on Tuesday. Since the weekly TV for the duration of the year has already been taped, it's unknown whether that appearance took place in Nashville, Tennessee during those tapings or whether it will simply be a video promo. Since when the heck did Impact went back to Nashville, Tennessee?
Right, I have no idea.
I thought they were still in Canada.
That's what I thought too.
I thought they were Canada-based. See, this is why I fell out of the loop with Impact, so I don't even know what the heck is going on or where the heck they were filming. But when I stopped watching, they were already in Canada. And I thought that they were going to be a Canada-based product. Now they brought it back to Nashville. I wonder when the heck that happened. I'm going to have to check out the information. But anyway, from Impact's website, it has been the talk of the wrestling world since Wednesday, but it is still hard to believe. Nevertheless, we have the confirmation this Tuesday. The brand new reigning AEW World Champion Kenny Omega will appear on Impact on Access TV. There's so much speculation as to what is happening, what it all means, and what comes next. On Tuesday, the wrestling world will get some answers. Omega won the AEW title for the first time Wednesday with a controversial win over Jon Moxley, who at one time did wrestle also for TNA Impact. Let's not forget. So those guys and those strangers to TNA Wrestling Impact, even though now it's Impact Wrestling. Where was I? Aided by the Impact VP and close friend Don Callis. The two ran out of Daily's place after the win, with Callis saying they would explain everything Tuesday on Impact. After being named AEW's Wrestler of the Week, Omega tweeted, "The biggest surprise here is everyone swallowing their pride and admitting this openly. The big question is whether this will lead to interpromotional matches, the reasons behind it, and whether Omega will be setting up camp in Impact during this storyline. In this week's Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave Meltzer said all that it is known is that there will be interaction of some sort. So, can you believe that? Can you literally believe that? The only thing I got to say is we got to wrap this up because, this Tuesday, Wednesday, they're going to be really important, but we're not going to leave out Raw, SmackDown, and NXT out in the cold. But this week, AEW's in control. They're making serious headlines right now. And if you're wrestling fans like we are, we got to see what the heck is going on here and what's going to be the launch of all this. We got major thoughts and predictions that we were going to try to, break this in, but unfortunately we're out of time and we got to wrap this up. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is one for the ages. I got to say this with all certainty. This is going to have professional wrestling cooking once again. Because here I thought with the pandemic, this was not going to happen. Here we thought we were going to have all these different shows for the week. And now it looks like AEW and Impact Wrestling is going to be in conjunction with one another. And this is really crazy. I got to say this. This is really crazy stuff. But hey, this is professional wrestling, and it's only going to get better from here, I hope. I hope that it's going to get it better from here because even myself, I'm going to be DVRing this thing. And you know how crazy that's going to get when you got something memorable in the works. So we hope that what Kenny Omega's got to say is going to be very, very effective from this point forward. And what's that going to do with the AEW and the Impact Wrestling relationship? And we know there's going to be more surprises. We just got to watch out for Tony Khan's tweets. Nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching this episode of the Wrestling Weekend Recap. Join us next Saturday as we bring you the good, the bad, and the latest inside news of Monday Night Raw, Friday Night SmackDown, the Wednesday Night Wars between AEW and NXT, and now looks like we're going to be including Impact Wrestling as well. Jade, things are only going to be cooking. We can't wait to see what is going to happen this upcoming week. For the one and only Jade, I am Ace Monex. We hope to see you here next week. Enjoy your Saturday night. Have a great night, everyone. Peace and love worldwide. Thank you very much for joining us.